gentleman from Nebraska, Mr. Bacon, is recognized for 5 minutes.
I want to thank the Inspector General for being here. As a 30-year Air Force veteran, I know the importance of the Inspector General. And I'd like to also say I've been a victim of credit card and fake identity, or a combination thereof, 3 different times. One time while deployed to the Middle East, guy took my identity, was living in a 5-star hotel. My wife caught him and had to fight really hard to get him arrested and held accountable. But I think Americans are tired of this because so many of us have been victims. I'd like to ask you, how does the IRS work with law enforcement when they finally catch someone scamming?
Great question. Again, there are hoops that have to be jumped through. Again, what I made mention of Title 26 of the United States Code. It's Section 6103 places severe restrictions on the type of information that the IRS can proactively share. And
With the law enforcement?
Even to law enforcement.
Wow.
But the individual can give the IRS license to release information, and that's normally how it's pursued. That's my understanding, at least.
Can we pass a bill of some type or legislate making it easier to hold these people accountable?
You know, it's not I don't think it's a question of legislation in this instance, Congressman. I really don't. One, you do have to have a victim who's willing to cooperate with law enforcement, and as you know, most victims are, unless they're engaged in somewhat.
Or you have some who've been dead for a while and they're using a deceased person, so it's hard to get their permission.
That's exactly. Well, I mean, again, you know, obviously, I would argue in a state, you know,
Right.
or someone would on their behalf. But but there's no question, it's knowledge, sir, and
Right.
that's part of the problem. A lot of people, especially seniors, obviously deceased individuals who may not have an estate which is large enough to have an executor or someone or administrator or someone who's
Right.
being proactive in that regard. So this is an area, sir, where can you eliminate all types of crime?
No, but I'd like to put a lot more of them in jail.
I'm with you 100%, sir.
So I would love to work with us with you and as a team to figure out how do we put our brains together, because I think this is way too rampant. People are getting off scot-free, and I think if we put an effort on this, I believe in deterrence. Throw more people in jail, maybe less people will do it. And maybe a parallel question: how do you tackle this when it's an overseas scam, say from Nigeria or wherever it may be?
Another great question. You know, I'm extraordinarily proud to give my colleagues, especially on the investigative side of my house, take a pat on the back. We recently, working with the Department of Justice and a few others, announced the indictment of a number of firms in India who were, and these were firms, the irony is, a lot of those call firms that are legitimate, you know, if you call Xerox, or not Xerox, but, you know, one of these telephone or computer companies, and they're transferred, you don't know where they are.
Right.
Many of them are located in India. So these same call centers were in the morning or night, depending on the time of day. You had a segment who were answering legitimate, you know, questions from consumers, and then we found that there was a small division over there who were engaged in these telephone scams, saying, "I'm calling from the IRS. You owe $10,000. You need to pay immediately. You need to use an iTunes card. You need to stay on the phone and do this while I'm talking to you." And you'd be surprised, sir, how many people fall prey to that, especially senior citizens and the like. So, but working with the Indian government, as well as obviously Interpol and other law enforcement agencies, we were able to obtain indictments. Unfortunately, those indictments were here in the U.S., so while there were a number of people who were domestic who we were able to arrest, more were overseas, and unless they come into the United States. It's not just India, too, just to be clear. There are many other countries.
I really think your favorable status as an IRS would go way up if you start showing some convictions on people scamming and doing fake IDs and taking advantage of the taxpayers. A related question, or something that you were talking about, and you may not be able to speak to it here. I realize when you have your funding cut, it's very hard to do everything that you want to do, and that's just a fact of life. And part of that was because of the targeting of the conservative and religious groups. Are there any investigations within the IG that's still working in that realm?
The short answer is yes, and we will be releasing shortly, in effect, a follow-up report to that initial. But I have to, once again, Congressman, make it clear, I'm not part of the IRS. I'm
Okay. Part of the Inspector
Department of
General. Got it.
Treasury. So, and we're the ones who identified that problem
Yeah.
back in 2013.
Well, good on you. Thank you.
No, thank you.
The gentleman's time's expired. The chair is going to suggest that the gentleman, since you've had this experience a number of times, I'm going to put at your disposal the resources of our staff here to see if we can't move forward in conjunction with the witnesses we have here today and others to see if we can't make some progress in this area, and whether it's legislative or whether it's regulatory or whatever it is. There's a lot of people getting ripped off for an awful lot of money, and I commend the gentleman for. Would the gentleman accept that?
I would love to have that responsibility. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it is so widespread. Americans want to see accountability and people held responsible for doing this. And I don't think we see it. So we sense it's happening all around us and not enough's being done to counter it.
Thank you. And I would note for the record that the gentleman is literally a general, and a real general. You're a real general too, but I mean a military general, and is used to ordering people around. So I think he'll get to the bottom of this.
I appreciate the Inspector General in the Air Force not having to look my way too often. So
The gentleman's time, as I say, has expired.